Hello everybody, welcome once again. This is my 8th video that I'm posting. This was a Blitz game that I played. Notice I'm playing the white pieces this time, finally. This is actually a short game that my opponent probably made, some pretty bad mistakes that allowed me to do very well early in the game. It was a very quick game. The reason why I'm showing it is because I want to discuss how sometimes material is not the be-all, end-all. Sometimes, if you can sacrifice some material and still do well if you have a big king side attack going. Over here, I think my opponent started off focusing too much on the queen side, and I was able to sacrifice a little material to get a big king side attack going, and I was able to win the game pretty quickly. I started out with e4 as I usually do, not necessarily because it's any better than d4, but because it's more fun than d4. He played e6. Sorry about that annoying the blue things over there. I'm in Chessmaster and the training mode is on for some reason, not sure how to turn it off. That's the French defense. I played d4, he plays d5, again the French defense. Normally you would do, I think one of the opening variations here is e takes d5 over here, and then d takes d5, and then you have an open king file over here. I didn't want to do that, even though I think that's one of the standard in the openings. I decided to play knight c3. I think it's actually out of the opening book, but I decided to play it anyway. Want to hit at this piece and want to try to develop a little bit. He plays, and again, this is the kind of thing that can probably transpose into many standard positions. He plays knight d6. Oops, excuse me. He plays c6. Double protecting this pawn over here. It's already protected twice by the queen and the e pawn, but he protects it again with the c pawn. Get a little bit of a stone wall formation going over here. So I played bishop d3. The reason why I did that is because I could see his king side might be a little bit of a weakness. He either castles over here. I wanted this bishop to be on this diagonal, and besides, there's not really any other great place to develop it to. I can't develop it to here. Here, obviously, because those squares are defended by pawns. He plays his bishop to b4, pinning the knight. So I want to unpin it. Bishop to d2. Again, I don't usually love playing my bishops to the second rank as white, but over here, again, I think I have a pretty aggressive position. I'm not too worried about having my bishops play further back. He plays queen a5. I don't like that move. I mean, it does double up on the knight over here, so that in case this bishop ever moves, he'll be able to win the knight and the pawn and hurt my pawn formation in exchange for the bishop. But the reason why I don't like the move is because I think it really puts his pieces too far toward the queen side, and really all I have to do is castle, and he's not going to have much pressure on my king at any point until much later in the game. Of course, the queen could always, this rank over here, this 5th rank, can be good for the black queen sometimes, in the Scandinavian opening, where white plays e4 and then black plays d5, and then e takes d5, queen takes d5. This fifth rank can often be very strong for the black queen. But over here, I personally don't like this move. I think it's a little too, it focuses too much on the queen side. I played e takes d5, he plays c takes d5, and then I develop my knight f3. He develops his knight f6. So again, we're looking over here. As you can see, clearly I'm going to castle. In fact, that's what I did the next move. I castled kingside, and he also castled kingside. So over here, obviously, material's even. We each have all our minor pieces. We each basically have one pawn off the board. My pieces are focusing toward the king side. This bishop is hitting this very critical, this h7 square, which generally could be a weakness. You always want to watch for that. My black bishop can get involved very quickly on the king side. My queen can jump out to the queen side pretty quickly. His position, on the other hand, his dark squared bishop and his queen are both a long way away from my king, and his white squared bishop is hemmed in by this e6 pawn, and it can't really move right now because it's being, this square is being hit twice, once by my knight and once by my pawn. So then I decided to, this might have been a little bit of a mistake actually, I played a3 to kick the bishop. Now, I obviously wanted to move this bishop out of there, so I wanted, before I moved that bishop out of there, I wanted to make sure that he couldn't capture the knight and the pawn for the bishop, so I wanted to kick the bishop out of that area. The reason why I say it might have been a mistake is because it might have wasted a little time and given him an opportunity to get his bishop back to the defense, to this square, somewhere where it would be in a better position to defend. I probably had a better move. Maybe I could have played knight take. Well, let's see. Maybe I could have played knight takes d4, and then he, if he takes it with the queen, I take the bishop and I've won a pawn. If he moves back the bishop and I'd probably won a pawn if I do that one way or the. Actually, I'm sorry, he could take it with this knight, so that wouldn't work. All right, there might have been some other moves I could do, but I decided to kick the bishop with a3. He plays his bishop back to d6. Again, it's a little bit of a mistake. I think the better move at this point probably would have been to e7, but d6, it looks like a natural move. It's an attacking move. Certainly, it gets positioned to hit my weak h7 square. Then I played bishop g5. Now again, bishop g5 is possible because this pawn is hemming in. Well, it's not true, also true because it's defended anyway. But what I'm trying to build up a kingside attack over here. I realized that I want to hit this h7 square. If you've seen some of my games, you may remember that I love getting the bishop to the point where it could hit this weak h7 square. And I'm always thinking about sacrificing it. Obviously, now it really wouldn't make sense to sacrifice it because I don't really have an imminent attack. This knight can come back and capture it. It doesn't really weaken his king all that much. But I put my bishop over here because if either I force this knight to move, or eventually I can trade off the bishop for the knight and then hit this h7 square, and I want to get my queen involved, etc. He plays bishop to e7. Now you can see the weakness of his previous move, bishop to d6. Now he plays bishop d7, where if he would have moved out originally, he would have had an extra tempo. By moving it to d6 and then back to e7, he's lost a full tempo. And you can see how even though the material's even, I have a much more powerful attacking position. His queen, the strongest piece on the board, is in a very weak position, being hung out to dry away over there on h5. Now I play my knight into position. That's, I'd love to be able to, really a few reasons. Number one, you bring the knight into a great square. He can't be kicked out of there very easily. And, that this knight is pinned against the bishop, so you can't just move the knight to here. It's going to be a little difficult. It's defended by the pawn. It's going to be a little difficult for him to kick out. And, of course, the main reason why I played that out is because it frees the queen. The queen is going to want to come to, either to f3 or hopefully to g4 to h5 once I'm able to get rid of this knight, so that I'm able to do that. He brings back his queen to b6. This is where I think he was a little materialistic. He took a look at that, and he said, well, now he's forking my two pawns. He's forking my pawn on d4 and on b2. And I thought about this for a while. Now, I really wasn't worried about the b2 pawn. I figured, let him take the b2 pawn, that's fine. There's that queen is going to get itself further into no man's land. And I'm going to have this big kingside attack, and the queen is going to be nowhere to be found. I was a little worried about this pawn, this d4 pawn. If he takes this d4 pawn, the queen is much more centralized. Still, it's not in a great position to stop my attack, but it's a little more centralized. It's the kind of thing where it can get back into the defense in a move or so if it has to. It kind of discourages my queen from coming out. My queen can come all the way out to h5. So I thought about it for a while. I was wondering if I should protect the d4 pawn. Now, the only way I could have protected it was to bring the knight over here, to bring the knight to e2. Now, if I do that, I block in my queen. I bring the knight further away from the center of the game. I didn't like that idea. And the other way to defend this pawn was to move the bishop out of the way. I don't want to move it back to e2. It's getting it out of position. It's blocking off the queen. Same reasons. I can't bring it here, here, or here, or here, or here. Well, I can bring it here, but then it doesn't help the attack. And I thought, I really can't sacrifice it now. I mean, I could take on h7 now. Then if he takes with the knight, then I take the bishop, and I've won a pawn. I've won a pawn and a bishop for a pawn. But if he takes with the king, what am I really going to do? If he takes with the king, I can't move my queen down here yet because this knight is still here. Even if I traded off the knight and then I brought my queen down here, the king just moves back here. I don't really have much of a support team. So what I decided is, eventually, forget the d4 pawn. I'm perfectly comfortable with that being taken. Let me get the one more attacking piece into the board. Remember, if I'm going to sacrifice this bishop, which I'm definitely planning on doing eventually, and I'm going to trade off this bishop for this knight, which I will if I have to, certainly, to free up this square, I need an extra piece in there. I can't just attack with the only two pieces that will be left, and that's the knight and the queen. Sometimes you can, but there's really no way over here. I need another piece in there if I'm gonna have this strong kingside attack. So I played rook to e1. Rook e1, obviously the idea is I want to get it up to e3 and then cut it across. This is sometimes referred to as a rook lift. It's always kind of dangerous to do because it takes a long time. In this case, a rook lift takes 3 moves.